while it was going. Just try.
Yeah, maybe. Let's see. So I click on this. It says thanks for tuning in. Stream ended 68 seconds ago. But if I click it now, I imagine it's gonna. Wonder if it'll just go somewhere else on our channel.
Let's see if we can find it.
Not too sure. How are you going, man? You said sounds like you have a busy day.
Yeah,
Oh, I
busy.
wonder. I reckon it's done this weird thing. It's done this before. So if you check out like the
Yeah,
what
I
if
just saw the what if part
hypotheticals,
2.
yeah, um, yeah, and that's the one that's live now. What the hell? So weird. That's all right. I can change that later. So we'll just run with that for the moment, and I'll just post that link elsewhere so people can see that. Let me go out of here. Let me go to the studio. So what's the dealios, man? What's the dealios?
Oh, it's just so many things going on. So many things all at once.
Life, eh?
Damn, that live stream's going so close to what we're talking at the moment.
Yeah, it's normally got a bit of a lag. Hey, there's
Mm.
normally 2 or 3 seconds, but yeah, that one seemed to be really, really on board. Maybe because it wasn't a scheduled one or something. I don't know. But let me copy this. So yeah, what the thing I wanted to do was to make our heads pretty much identical, because what I have almost zero control over what happens with the clips when I create them in Riverside. I
Mm.
can choose to do a single focus one or one where it switched between us, but then the text appears right on our head. It appears
Okay.
right here, which is awful. So
It's a bit annoying.
yeah, I've left them a comment saying like, if you could fix that, that would be awesome. Here's the new unbroken stream link. All right, paste that, do that, and I'll do that on Twitter as well. Oh, should I say X? Have you started calling it X1?
I don't think I've ever like said the word Twitter and in like out forcefully. Like I've thought it in my
Okay.
mind, but not actually stated it.
Yeah. So are you gonna ever say X then?
I think if someone else, someone did mention at work because there was something that we're doing of changing something from Twitter to X.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It doesn't come up in enough conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not a super common thing, but
No.
cool. All right. Would you mind just recording your audio, my friend?
Yes. Let me
And
set that
we'll
up.
jump into this, and some of my news will appear in this episode anyway, so it'll don't need to spend too long on that. And let me bring up my notes. Here we are, right at the top. Beautiful. So let me know when you're ready.
Okay. Sweet.
Cool. All right, let's jump into
Let's
this.
do it.
Let's see if this thing will work.
We all can be mortals.
Welcome, Mere Models, to another episode of the Mere Models Musings, episode 405 to be exact. We're here on a Wednesday, live as always, 9th of August of 2023. You've got Kyron here
Got one on the other side.
and Juan on the other side, and we are burning out. We're stressed out.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, we are talking about burning out and being stressed out. This is a musings episode, a topical one, so we dive deeper into a particular theme and we expound upon that, bringing in parts of effective philosophy, this being things that we do in our actual everyday life as mere mortals, and try and give you some advice, tips, things that we find work for us or don't work for us, and just dive into a theme. So this one I picked in particular, and there was a reason for this, and it was because I watched. Have you heard of the Epicenter podcast one?
No.
No, and neither had I before. And I had saved this thing. It was way down in the bottom of my to watch later list in YouTube, and it's been there sitting there for I reckon a year at least. And I finally got around to I was scrolling down, and I went, man, I'm just gonna watch this thing just to get it out of here.
Mm.
And it was a podcast. It's kind of a crypto related one, and it had a Eric Voorhees on it, which was why I really wanted to watch it, or why I saved it originally. Obviously, I didn't really want to watch it, and it was a good enough episode that I went, all right, I'll check out one of these others that they've got going on and see what it's like.
Hmm.
And so they had been up to episode 500 or something recently, and I went, that's pretty impressive getting
Mhm.
to that many episodes. And there was this dude on there, Brian, and man, the first bit was kind of boring, to be honest. They didn't even talk about the previous 500 episodes, which was what the title was about. They were just talking about this dude Brian and his appendicitis. But it was intriguing to me because he was talking about, oh yeah, we worked so hard. I was busting my balls with the company, with the podcast, with everything, that it kind of all resulted in him burning out, him getting appendicitis, and then him just having to take multiple months off because he was just so wrecked. And I thought, okay, there's something interesting we can talk about. And another thing was some of my friends recently complimented me. I think it was a compliment where they said, "Oh, yeah, Karen, you're just never really stressed. You always seem kind of in a pretty even keel. You're never running around. You never, even if you do complain, it's not like it's a deep, deep one." So I thought, okay, this is something we can both talk about. And maybe we should start one with burnout, just the concept in general. Is it what do you think about it? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it something to be avoided? What's your general thoughts?
I just think in generalities, we are all mere mortals, which is like I'll put that as a caveat. But I would say that we're all relatively weak source when it comes to what we consider actually being stressed and weak, to beyond. So there's, I guess I'll compare it to, and I don't have a specific definition, but I'll compare it to, with training and being burnt out or overtrained or hitting rhabdo. When you actually look at the science and like the specifics behind it, you're not overtraining. Like if you're actually overtraining in the definition of sort of like overtrained and rhabdo style,
Can you
it's
remind us what rhabdo means?
uh honestly, I don't even know the definition of
I'll
the
look it
exact
up
rhabdo,
quickly.
but as a general, I'd say in general, it's when I think it's one of your organs starts like shutting down because you've overexerted it.
Okay, RHABDO is the breakdown of damaged muscle, which results in the release of muscle cell contents into the blood,
There
and
you
then
go.
it causes
There you go.
organ damage. Yeah.
So that level of damage, one, it's fairly extreme, but two, like the true overtraining, or at least like overstimulating or too much stress on the body, it's very, very hard. And it's another thing that I enjoy talking about. It's a time bound thing. So it's going to be a prolonged time domain for it to be called like true overtrain. Because if you can bounce back from it, it's not actually that. So I think in the burnout perspective, I think just on par, we're all a little bit weak sauce. And that's okay. That's us as mere mortals. So like take an instance for me, right? Last couple of
This is
days,
we.
dude, intense. Like it's been an incredibly, incredibly intense, probably since Saturday. Just been honestly, couldn't even tell you the day. Like the fact that it was Wednesday today, I was like, wow, insane.
First time flying with a baby.
First time flying with a baby, just a lot of stuff happening. Probably going to beds about talking current times, 11 p.m. midnight, getting up at 3. That's been back-to-back days with just completely packed days. Now, I would say that yes, that's like stressful, but it's not redlining for a prolonged time. So I'd say as a starter with burnout, it's one, we're a bit weak sauce, but two, I think when you should start considering the burnout or like what people talk about burnout, you need to consider it from a time domain perspective, i.e., is it a prolonged thing? And then, cool, then you can start talking about reasonable burnout. Maybe like what you just gave that example, that guy, 500 episodes. I'm assuming this is a couple of years, busting his ass day in, day out. Okay, I could see where, if you're really putting other things away that are from a standpoint of recovery, of removing cortisol. I think Andrew Huberman actually talked about this, where he was almost saying cortisol in generality is probably good for you, apart from if it makes you not sleep well. So, if he wasn't sleeping well because of the stress, okay, then I could see burnout. But I just have a propensity to think it's going to be a prolonged amount of it. And so, to the example, here's I'm going to go maybe a direct opposite to Karen's point of view, where I think you get comments of people saying like, "Oh, it's a compliment that he's not stressed out. I go, nah, that's a sign people are just not trying hard enough. That to me, I have to go, yep, they're just not pushing the boundaries hard enough. I think some level of burnout is almost a good thing. Almost a good thing.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
What are your thoughts on burnout?
Well, yeah, I mean, just on stress, and then I guess getting to burnout. So stress is generally, I was doing a little bit of prep before this, but I'd heard this previously and read this in books like Anti-Fragile by Nicholas Nassim Taleb, where the concept of anti-fragility is, okay, well, what's something fragile? Something fragile is when you put a stressor on it, it breaks. And he was then saying there was no real good word for the opposite of that, because most words that you would try and use are things like robust or sturdy or strong. But that's just when you put a stressor on something and it doesn't change. It is immobile, I guess. So anti-fragile is when you put a stressor on it and it becomes better. And this is where you hear stress is a good thing. And I kind of agree with it and kind of don't. But when
which is why I expected. I definitely expected it, folks. If you know the mere mortals here, I totally coming into this. I knew Karen would be probably on the camp, slightly off the middle towards less stress and whatnot, and you'd probably find me somewhere the other extreme, like really pushing at the other extreme, kind of looking down on people, being like, "No, you need to I'm gonna drag you up here. Yeah, come and get absolutely smashed."
Yeah. So when I suppose when we think of stress, though, it's generally, I think of it in this kind of, it's in a bad light. When people talk about stress, they don't usually say it as a good thing. I'm stressed out. That when they say I'm stressed out, it doesn't mean, yeah, I'm doing well. It's kind of, oh, I'm stressed out, getting towards burning out. So I'll stick with burning out for the moment, which I think is the more extreme. When he was talking about it, and I've heard this other people talking about it, like a quick exit, for example. And so usually this is in the entrepreneurial space, and they're creating a company, and they're creating something to look for an exit at some stage. And I remember you asked me a couple of weeks ago on a meandering session of, if Spotify came around with $10 million and asked to buy out the mere mortals or something, and my reaction was just instantly no. And part of that's just due to I don't have any thoughts about legacy, but this would be the closest to it, which is I don't want them fucking with my stuff. I've created something, and I just don't want them to go and butcher it by putting ads in it or doing whatever the hell they want with it. But so much of it kind of seems so short-sighted that like looking for an exit. I'm going for something. I'm going to go absolutely hard, balls to the wall, 2-3 years of just 18-hour days or 16-hour days, sleeping in the office, that sort of deal. And I and kind of purposefully burning out in a way. And I just feel it's short-sighted, because all of those people, what do they do when they get the quick exit? None of them are kind of like me, where they're just they're chilling on just got their regular life. They do their handstands, they have their hobbies, they do things like that. No, they always seem to then get bored and then want to burn out again and create something new. And so I go, well, why don't you just kind of do something fun for the whole time? And sure, you won't get there as quick, but you won't have this absolute up, absolute down, absolute up, absolute down, and do this cycle of every 3 years.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, yes and no in the sense of, I mean, what you described just then would have to then caveat that people dislike going through that process, right? So, like, I know personally, Nick Blair, we've had him on the podcast now twice. He did that, worked his ass off, sold the company, 30 million plus, took a break, relaxed, did whatever the hell he wanted, and then went back in and did it all over again.
Did it sound like he was burning out? Was that the things that he would describe?
Look, it didn't sound like and we probably didn't delve into how hard was it during it, although it did sound like it was a bit of a slog throughout the first company. And sure, I'm sure the second company had its own challenges as well. Maybe it wasn't all the way to the burnout, so that's something to inquire with him. But it would be, the caveat there would be, hey, the person would have to be kind of not enjoying that. So again, I can only probably give my own direct example. Yes, I've had some like intense days, and in the past I've had some really intense days as well. but it's I wouldn't say that I'm the best at this, but definitely on a mere mortal scale, all right, is that I still perform way better when there is some fairly hectic stresses coming in and at play. No, again, no, not on an extended burnout perspective, but enough that it like drives you to keep on going to doing the things. So, I know for certain, I'm not a person that could ever be the one who's like, okay, cool, I'll just chill out and again do 4 hours of working out and chill out in the morning. Even if I miraculously did something that I could completely and utterly retire for the next year and do whatever I want, you'll find me no, and you'll find me not just doing something, but I'll still quite certainly put myself in a position where I'll be quote unquote stressed because I'll be doing too many things. I guess that's sort of the example, and I think other people might find themselves also potentially getting into that. And not because they don't because they want to, but almost because it's almost like a safety zone to feel the pressure, and then also you could either call it either motivates you or at least kind of like forcefully gets you to do something else.
Yeah, I've got a whole section on voluntary versus involuntary stress, but I
Mm,
think that was a good point where it's that old saying of time. What is it? Work expands to fill the time slot it's allotted to it, or something like that.
mm,
I'm sure there's a much cleaner, more succinct way of saying it. For me, it might be seem like I say chilling out in the morning, but essentially what I mean is I'm just doing work where there's no time pressure on it. It doesn't necessarily need to be done this particular morning. I could leave it for the book review, for example, until Thursday, but I recorded yesterday. And so that means I don't have to go crazy tomorrow morning, then try and fit in a workout, then try and fit in a like co-hosting with James on Pod News, and then try and fit an interview with Mikhail or conversation with Mikhail in the evening. It's like, no,
well,
I'd rather.
look, I would pause you there because I think we probably haven't defined stressed in itself as you're talking through that, because I think I don't know if mine's going to be a differentiator in comparison to you what you're thinking through it, or maybe what you could see it in the example. But I honestly think just mere mortals in the using of the word stress, I kind of go like, nah, that's not good enough. Honestly, like, how often in your life have you used like, oh yeah, I'm stressed? Not much, I'd imagine.
Yeah, purposefully
Honestly,
though.
dude, I don't
There's a
think I've
purpose for that.
really ever used the word for that. But it's not purposefully. I never really think about it as stressed, because I honestly just think that the word stress is hiding more of an underlying truth of whatever it is that you're talking about. Like when you say, like when someone says, oh, I'm stressed about today, the stress is what is, oh, is it like, I'm getting too many external actions being asked of me that I can't fulfill, and so it's competing with my internal, expectations. Is it purely like an expectation thing? Is it a takeaway of your, like, the amount of energy that you have to expend to give to it? So, like, the encompassing nature of stress is like it's too broad. I almost feel like if you're using that, you're not precise enough with a lot of your conversations with it.
Usually, when I think of it, I think there's a time bounded thing that needs to be done, and you're under pressure to get it done in that time. And so, this is typically for a work context. That's the easiest way of thinking about that.
Mm,
Uh, and then the other would be the synonym would probably be something like worry. I'm stressed out. I'm worried about something that is going to happen, and I feel I can change it, but I don't know exactly what to do, or it's going to take
mm.
a lot of work or something like that. That's typically what I think when I think
And
about
I think
stress.
that's a typical negative extrapolation of stress, but just as equally, the word stress for me, well, like when sometimes when not all the time, when I hear stress, I go, yeah, like I apply heaps of stress on my body this morning. I did a workout, and then I did a CrossFit workout, and then I did a run, and all those stresses were good stresses in the sense of it's modulating, muscle fibers to break down, to rebuild them again. It's stressing mentally and physically when you're doing a run to improve. None of that in my mind is a worry. All of that was just like, oh, fantastic. So maybe
Yeah.
I'm
Well, I would just say common lingo. People wouldn't say I stressed my body today. They'd say I worked out. So
mm,
definitely when I think of stress, and I think when most people think of it, it is always going to be in a negative context. And
Yeah, I mean, you
that's
mentioned it just before.
just how
So
it is.
do you consciously think about stress or like reducing stress?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, that's kind of in my summary section, but yeah, I definitely do try and it, and I have various ways which I go about doing that. And I think it's because I'm one of those people who I don't work well just using my two definitions of it as I don't work well when I have a time boundary.
Hmm.
For some people it seems that they can get more quality work done and in a quicker manner. I get, I say, less quality work done and probably I do just the bare minimum, which I guess is what you're kind of aiming at. So I'm thinking right now of I had this dig that I was responsible for when I was in the mines, and it was this misfires thing. It was just an absolute shit show from start to finish. And I I remember one day I went down to it with the kind of superintendent, and he would go up, and I'm like, yeah, okay, as per your fucking instructions, I've created this thing, 6 meters levels, bam, 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 down. This is, all the plans are here. I've already printed them out. I'm ready to go home. It's a Friday afternoon, Dunskies. No, sorry, it was a Thursday afternoon. And then he like looks at it, and then he looks at this, and he's like, yeah, no, I think we really need it to be 4 meters. And I'm just going like, are you fucking kidding me? This is gonna have to change everything. I have to change everything. And I had 2 or 3 hours to do it. And that just sucked. It was just a shit afternoon. I got it. I printed out some stuff. I'm sure there were some mistakes in there. I'm sure the design wasn't as neat and clean as I normally create them. And I just went, man, this stress didn't help me. This this
Well,
stress
hold on.
was
So
not
let me
a good thing.
let me excavate here. So what bit became stressful? Then the fact that you had to then go back and get the 4 meter level
Yeah, it was
set up
it
in
was the
3 hours.
the time boundary was I was meant to leave at 5 p.m. with my colleagues because we were carpooling, and it was 3 p.m. and I had I ended up making everyone late because I had to just try and get this shit done. So there was a very
Mm.
time bounded thing that needed to get done so that we could all leave. And
Yeah, that's an
that
interesting
was that was
point.
unfun. And so where did I thrive? I thrived on creating all of the stuff days in advance, having it all printed out and all ready, rather than okay, current. I could have I could have left everything until that very afternoon if I wanted to, and then I wouldn't have I wouldn't have wasted all that time. But
Mm.
that's a kind of 1 in 20 occurrence event, and most of the time, all the previous work that I had done would have paid off.
Yeah. So and do you feel like that has always been the case for you?
Yeah, pretty much. I can't recall any times where I've had pressure put on me and I perform better. And so you can
Mm.
look at this whether I'm doing handstands and people are wanting to take a video or something. I don't perform well in that. Uh, I remember I would always be stressed out about the band performances and things that we had to do for when I used to play drums. That was the worst bit of it, the actual performance. And I would play worse than how I practice always. There was never
Mm.
never a time where I would be, man,
Better.
I rose to the occasion. Yeah, yeah. So this is definitely a personal thing for me.
Yeah.
And
Well, and I'm
at
trying
least
to
in terms of the
connect.
time boundary.
Yeah, I'm trying to connect it to like to the general mere model because I wonder where most of population sits. Do they sit with you, or do they sit somewhere between us? Because I guess for my example, let's take this podcast, right? I didn't even know if I was going to make this podcast. I was literally rushing through traffic after having to deal with some crazy shit and having to deal with last second conversations and stresses about a go live and all this sort of stuff. And I've told you this before, my like thing of anxiety or whatnot, it's the before they're doing the thing. But because I had zero time, it was just I literally arrived home, fed the dog, set up the room for like baby to go to sleep. So when my partner gets home to like can go set up, literally jump on, connect microphone, get a drink, start, like literally just begin.
Mm.
And I feel fantastic. Like I literally
Yeah.
feel like, wow, this is awesome. All this time, like all the pressure helped me just do it. Like there was just no intermediary of thinking about something else or playing around. And so, at least for me, and this I've experienced this in many other areas, the stress of particular things has encouraged even people to come to me. So this is like a couple of years ago now. Someone would come to me and be like, "Hey, we have something like insane. We need this whatever done in 2 hours." And most people would just be like, "No," and it'll normally like it would have landed on my plate, and I'd go, "Cool, let's do it. 2 hours, let's go." And maybe there's something around the level of quality of some of my work because I know that my level of quality on at least work things, not maybe not in other areas, but at least work, it's not you're never going to get like the highest of quality from me. But you're holy shit, you're going to get some stuff like on the time frame that you want
You'll get something.
to enough volume. You're going to get something. And so I don't know. So I don't know where people sit with between us. Is it, is a mere mortal probably somewhere in between us? Is it more towards you? Is it more towards me? Honestly, I'm not even sure.
Yeah, me neither. I'd struggle to guess on that. But talking about the anxiety part, which was the other thing that I was mentioning about stress, what you just said then sounds awful. And that is another example where if I had this podcast, for example, I don't get stressed out about them or worry about doing this. This is really comfortable. This is kind of where I'm in my element, to be honest. But let's just take something, a Bitcoin meetup, and I'm said that I'm going to be on the soapbox. This
Oh,
happened
I'll
last
give you a good
Thursday.
example after this as well. Yeah.
So I said, yeah, I'm gonna do that. If I then was late to the thing and I missed stuff, and then some crazy stuff happened, and we all had to move from one room to the next, and I had little time to mentally prepare for it, but there was still this expectation. Hey, Karen, you're going to do the soapbox thing for 5 minutes. That of adding of additional things and taking away from kind of time of preparing would increase anxiety for me. I would go, oh, now I've got even, I don't want to do this thing, or if I've got the time bounded pressure to do this thing, and now I've got other factors being thrown into the mix. That doesn't help to me. That is a detractor. That's where I go, no, fuck this stress, fuck this. It's this is not making me better. This is
There's not supporting my cause. Well,
yeah.
here's another comparison against, just to give another example between you and me. And this morning, once again, yesterday I knew going into today, like I knew it was already going to be intense, right? And I call it intense just because it just packed. There's a lot of things to do in the one day. And I went, okay, if I want to do what I want to get done in the morning, I need to get up at 3:50. I need to sort out some reading and do a few other things. I need to go do the workout I want to do, to then do the CrossFit session. I went, I'm going to do a 5K as well. Now, I did a 5K on Monday and it sucked. I didn't want to do it. I was like, oh, this is terrible. So I already in my mind preemptively like, oh, where am I going to fit this 5K? Do I do it at midday for lunch? Nah, I won't do it. Am I going to do it in the afternoon? Forget it. Even less time. Like we went to go check out some houses. It was just crazy busy moving around. Not going to happen either. I'm not going to do it after the podcast. I want to go to sleep. So I went, okay, here you go. I'm like pressured here. I don't know where I'm going to find it, but I'll probably park the car and I'll go for a run. Now, woke up later than I thought. Didn't get the reading. Had to rush into the gym. Part of the workout that I had to do had to like cut down so I could go and do the CrossFit workout. Did the CrossFit workout. Finished. Went and got a coffee with people. I was like, oh, cool. Let's just go into the chaos. And then I had even less time. So, there was just like stress on stress because I had to get to work at a particular time. And I was playing it in my mind. I was like, how am I going to get this 5K in? And I went, I know. So I parked the car a little bit further away, threw on the backpack, which weighs about 15 kilos in terms of the full thing, and just ran the 5Ks with the backpack. And I just ran further away from work and then looped back around and ran all the way back for a 5 kilometer. Now I did it in intervals, which is what it was supposed to be. And not even a word of a lie, dude. It was easier than the Monday's 5 kilometer. And I couldn't even tell you why. But again, I think it was just the fact of like, oh shit, like I've got to do that. Like it was, I think I left my car and I had to be in the office in 35 minutes. So it was like, I have like there is no, and I have to get there and have a shower and go up and work. And there is no like nothing. There is no like I can't just start walking. So it was one of those that cool, cool. And the stress of that helped me have a fun 5K. So that, I guess, is probably like another example of like, oh yeah, that's good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, true. Before we get onto the boostergrams, I just wanted to finish off on the burning out, and was I did come up with one justification of what I thought was a why someone would want to voluntarily burn out. And this was so I went to the V Friends meetup here in Brisbane last Saturday, and man, talk about a dude who is probably somehow close to burning out, but never really seems to. Gary V. I was hearing someone was saying like he's got 4 personal assistants. They all just compete with his schedule to find out down to the minute when things are going to, like, what he's going to be doing, which is just like how awful a life for me personally.
Yeah.
And that's one where I go, okay, maybe for someone like that who wants to be, the kind of next Walt Disney or create something of that magnitude, you do have to at the very least get close to the edge. And then the other one was there was a guy I met there who he does Shopify things. I think he creates websites for businesses and either integrates them with Shopify or he does something Shopify kind of related. And he was telling me like, oh yeah, the winds are changing, and Shopify with what they're doing, they're going to make him obsolete, whatever he's doing now, in kind of 2 to 3 years. And so he is now he was basically saying like balls to wall, just trying to get as much money as he can whilst this is still a thing. And I was going, okay, well, that's maybe one instance where you could look at that and go, all right, well, burning out in this case does make sense because, yeah, I guess it is a time bounded thing, but it's an opportunity which won't come again. You do have to do this thing right now. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I thought when you're talking about burnout, I thought the place where you would see it is when you do acting against acute goals with short enough time frames. Not enough that's going to absolutely destroy you for like eternity, but if you're aiming for a gold medal, if you're having to beat out a competitor to win a contract so that your freaking company can exist, because then the opposing is, well, you either burn out or you don't exist anymore, or you burn out but you don't win, like or you don't do it anymore. And to some people that's like there is no other alternative, it's do that. And I'm sure you could achieve some acute goals without burning out, but sometimes, and maybe largely, that can happen. And so like that then becomes like the lesser evil.
Yeah, I always wonder, and I've got a hypothetical at the end about this of would people be better doing a long, slow and steady or whatnot. But the thing I suppose I hear a lot with burnout stories, which is typically coming from this entrepreneur type person who is going as hard as they can as possible. It's rarely that you hear about. Well, actually, you will hear about other people, a janitor, for example, burning out, but that's typically because he's got all sorts of other shit going on in his life, and it's not because he's single-minded focused. So this is very much talking about those people. How many times do you think it's done for a good purpose or an actual purpose that they're really aware of? So are they doing it for the challenge? Is it kind of a self-punishment thing? Is it for prestige? Are they doing it for their mum to impress her, that sort of deal? How many people do you think of that entrepreneur type mindset who reach a point of burnout are doing it for what you would call a good reason, or at least a well thought out reason? Because so many of these stories that I hear, I just think like, man, you sounded like you were doing that for the wrong reason. And
yeah, but what does the wrong reason mean, right? Like, just because it's a wrong reason from your viewpoint does mean it's a wrong reason from their viewpoint, right? Like that, even if it is, let's just take something that we might see as the wrong reason, which maybe it's you're doing it for status.
Let's
right?
just say a reason where they themselves go, I wish I hadn't done that.
Yeah, I mean, if it's, I mean, yeah, duh. If they're if they're burning themselves out for a reason that they're like, well, they shouldn't. Well, you shouldn't have done that.
Yes. So
But
like
I
a
think we've got to
retroactive
be.
thing. How many? Because if it's 95% of people are doing
I
that,
think there'd be a
then you
lot.
could
I think.
then you could go, well, chances are whatever you're doing right now, if you're burning out because of it, you're probably going to regret this later. So
Yeah, I'd even spin it. I'd even spin it around more because again, true burnout. You're talking more so like obviously mental and physical, but
yes,
like it's a hard. That's like it's a very hard push to be truly burnt out. So you should have. I'm talking like consecutive weeks and months of poor sleep, poor nutrition, no training. You know, like mental breakdowns, like some really heavy stuff.
randomly crying. Yeah.
Because I bet you, so I'll bet you, I would absolutely be willing to bet that if you took two, again, entrepreneurs, right? Let's just say they work the same hours, they sleep the same hours over a 6 month period, eat the same, train the same, whatever it may be. But one of them enjoys what they're doing, like they're doing it because they freaking love it, and the other one is in it for the money or the status or the fame. And then when maybe at the end of it, they both achieve the exact same thing, but one of them takes benefit out of the fact of their effort rather than the winnings or the you're the most smartest person doing it. I kind of feel like the first guy's going to be off the best, and maybe the second one is going to be feeling like, oh fuck, I'm all burnt out because I didn't achieve X. So I think it's also a part of it in if your expectations are met, you don't tend to think about it as burnout. You almost feel satisfied
Yeah, potentially.
as long as it's not an absolute detrimental long term like destruction.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You've actually hurt your heart, or you've lost family members irreparably, but things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like in an acute one again. I look back in the weekend that gone by, and sleep was atrocious, food was atrocious, exercise was not even non-existent. But I feel like the accomplishment, which I wrote down that I wanted to do, was put my little girl to sleep, feed her, feed the other baby that we were looking after, and like that was a win. And so for me, I was like, oh, it wasn't burnout. It wasn't like yes, I did feel like, oh crap, this is going to be like a stressful thing, but it didn't end up being that, and definitely couldn't call it burnout. But I think if you had different expectations, maybe if you went down the path of, hey, I've got to be working out and doing thing and making money and status, and not that, but like an example of that, and put that into an extended view, then you would change your mind and go, okay, well that's burnout. I'm burning out, and that's why again I kind of go, with burnout or with stress in general in the consensus, it's what do you mean by that? Like you're burnt out because, and when you like find out the why, which usually, normally good tip here for me immortalites, ask yourself 5 whys when you're doing a lot of things, right? And at least you got to probably examine this in like first 2 whys. When you go like I'm burnt out, cool, why? And then you might find out like I've got a kid, I've got to work, I've got to do this, okay, cool. Investigate a couple more whys, and you probably will find that in some of them you go, oh well, I really got to do this because I think that I should be doing this, and then the reality is like, no, you shouldn't. Like, no, that's actually not at all something that you need to be doing, or even feel stressed about, or you're thinking about it in a completely, different way. Oh, cool, okay, and I feel like nothing might change, but your mindset, and the mindset change helps the shift from stress to almost like satisfied about the energy that you're expending.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Yeah, well, that'll lead us into the involuntary section after the Boostergram Lounge. So let's jump into them. So while Juan's bringing that up, I'll just say, if you want to know what a Boostergram is, this very morning I did a whole episode on the like the how to, what is it, why is it useful, how would you do it, and how you can get access to this as a listener on the Value for Value Show podcast. So that was episode 45, and it was called Boostergram Messages with Money, I think is what I called it. So if you want to know what a Boostergram is, like now I have a place to direct people and say, this is what it is, this is how you do it, these are the places, this is the apps. So yeah, I won't give as much explanation right now as we normally do.
Good. I like it. All right, let's get it started. We got Dave Jones, weekly boost for the Mere Modulate Nation, 12,112 sats, and using Cron. Again, Dave, thank you very much. We've got a couple here from Kyron in terms of ones at the botanist. We've got 383 cents from Peter. anyone who genuinely asks themselves, "Am I an asshole?" is
So,
by definition not an asshole.
yeah, multiply those by 10 because those are the ones that are
Oh,
coming
thank you.
through. So
Okay,
that's
sorry, sorry.
10%. So that was a
Cool.
baby boost. 3838.
Oh, nice. 3838. Ah, beautiful. Thank you very much, Peter. And yes, if you ask themselves, "Am I an asshole?" but it's by definition not an asshole. So
Yeah.
I guess you're becoming
De-
sentient.
default default hack right there for all your assholes out there. Just say that you've
Ask
asked
yourself.
yourself,
Yeah,
and then magically you no longer won't be. But it is. I think it is a good indication. Maybe an unprompted thing. If you maybe not. I think you can still be an asshole, and it's just in your temperament. It's in your nature that you're going to be an asshole. Like if you're a
true.
really aggressive, very assertive, very confident person, I think assholery will come out of you, even if you try and stop it, potentially.
Yeah, it's just by default. Another one. This was Jeff's episode. Good podcast. Had issues with the volume levels between speaker while in car. This from user 592500. That's 1,000 sats sent using Fountain. Yes, I think we noticed that as well. Current
Yeah,
did some.
non ideal recording. Like it was just one had to go to his office, so and I think the main thing was you speak loud and he speaks soft. I think that
I
was the
also
main.
think, yeah, need to play around with the microphone settings with that as well.
Okay.
I'll flip back to this other one as well that you got here, but just first I'll go to Cole McCormick. It says, Karen, if you're in America, I will do everything I can to get you and do a podcast. Cole and Karen Rendevoir. We only record when we're in the same country.
Yeah, I'm keen.
15,492 sats sent using Fountain. There you go. Karen's keen, Cole. So
We'll make it happen.
2024, mate. 2024. And I'll go back to this one. Nepalese listeners. What's the backstory in the
So
the Hetadua Begmati province?
yeah. So as, on the podcast index, there was some interesting stats coming out, and people. For the show, we have a thing called the OP3 tag in it, which basically allows someone who to collate information on our podcast, which it's basically just a way to show our stats in a more open manner. So at the moment, you could only kind of see them on Buzzsprout if I didn't have this tag in there.
Mm-hmm.
With the tag in, which I asked Buzzsprout to do, this now shares information out to the wider ecosystem. So it's kind of like open sourcing that aspect of podcasting, which has always been very much you don't know what shows are popular. You kind of have metrics of maybe how many reviews they have on iTunes, maybe how much people are talking about it, how like internet traffic, that sort of stuff. But it's very hard to get that. So anyway, what he was seeing was there was a lot of Nepalese listeners on Fountain in particular, and he was going through them, and he's like, "These actually looked legit." And I don't go in our stats that often, so if either we have a whole bunch of Sherpas on the top of Mount Everest listening into the Mere Mortals, which I like to think would be super cool, or it might be people using VPNs, which are going through through Nepal for some reason. So if there are any Nepalese listeners out there and they're particularly listening to us, I
Shout
would
it
love
out.
to know that, because I think there is something about the title Mere Mortals, which was at least in India for a while. I think just the title of our podcast was appealing to them. Something about
Well, I
Mere
quickly,
Mortals.
I actually quickly just saw the commentary as well, the comments on YouTube, and I saw there was love from India in there as well. So there you go.
There you go.
Prove the point.
Brilliant. Awesome. Thank you. So it's that was just a funny little thing, just a little call out for if anyone did that. And I need to say a huge apologies to Chad F. He's been in our leaderboard for a while. I can't remember when he actually ticked over to the 100K, but I thought it was at that time last year when you were sending shirts out to everyone, and we never actually got a shirt out to him. So,
Mate.
so
Okay. There
yeah,
you go,
that's a huge mistake on my part. Which I have the shirt here. I'm going to send it out, and also another big apology to everyone. I'm on the mode for apologies. So there's 21 shirts left to be given out to people who reach the 100K limit. One, when we were initially ordering them, said we should get more extra larges, and I was like, nah, there's general population, it's going to be more mediums and larges. So we now have officially out of extra larges, and we've got 14 mediums and 7 larges. So
There you go. See?
apologies. That's all. That's my bad.
Um, very good. All right, that's been the Boost Graham Lounge. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you
Just
everyone for
on
supporting the show.
just a few of the comments I saw on YouTube, I think leads us into the involuntary versus voluntary stresses, right? Just around burnout. So we got Paula Bear saying when she thinks of burnout, she thinks the pain of rejection is way better than the pain of regret. And I think this kind of comes into some of that voluntary versus involuntary notes that you were making, because there are some times when you can make the voluntary decision to put yourself in a stressor that, at least in some way, shape, or form, you know that it's going to be beneficial to you. Like it's going to be like a workout. You know that putting yourself through the paces of a hard workout that might feel like crap during it is going to have longer term benefits, even though you've got short term stresses. But this can even apply to, in a work context. If you note and you put down the stress of, and you're capable of doing a very long shift or a long night because you're then supporting other people or you're a frontline supporter or whatever have you, that ends up being more valuable to the wider community, the human flourishing, etc., than it would have been to not put that through. So I think that there is an aspect to it. There is also an aspect of, being the man in the arena, right? And putting yourself in the stressor and the reality that you also have the opportunity to be doing these things. And I guess that's where it kind of puts me in a position where, like, sometimes when I think that when there's considerations of stress, I go, yeah, but if you were to really be given the choice, right? Be upfront with the reality of where you are. Are you saying that you'd rather not be in this position and just be an absolute bum doing handstands for 4 hours, right? Would you prefer that? And sometimes, and I guess this is the population, like that type of question to the your A type entrepreneur, they'd say, fuck no. Of course I want to keep on doing this. But then you have the separate conversation where you'd go to someone who maybe is a bit more zen, who has maybe an understanding that success and failure is intertwined in life and you can find it everywhere. And someone who has the choice to do whatever he wants in his life, and you go, hey, do you want to be more stressed out and do all these things? Like, fuck no. Why would I do that? I can go and do my own choosing to do my own things. I think it's but even in that, there's stresses for those individuals in maintaining that life, in choosing to be, separated from maybe what culture wants them to do or from the pressures of other things. So I think in all of them, there's voluntary stresses that were put towards, and all of them, as long as there's reasoning behind it, can be a good thing.
Yeah, that's very similar to what I thought. So just to highlight,
Mm.
I think there's a huge difference between the involuntary and voluntary ones. So you can have things which will seem similar but will be different in fact. So the difference between having a work deadline and then going to I don't know, a Scrabble tournament, for example, I think they can be similar in, okay, I've got to do this amount of preparation before this thing. One of them is, in this case, let's just assume it's a job that you don't particularly enjoy. That's an involuntary one, whereas the Scrabble one would be, that's something you do in your free time. Having a heart attack versus going to a gym session. Well, one of them is completely involuntary, the other is completely voluntary, and yet you can still have the same physical feelings, more or less. It depends. And also things like, I don't know, if you're in a relationship and you've got a fear of being verbally abused or even physically abused, and you've kind of got this anxiety, you've got this worry. Any moment, this could change or turn sour, or it could be a dramatic incident, or it could be just unexpected chaos. And then if you're learning how to cold approach, you're talking to girls for the first time and you're out in a nightclub environment. I think they can be very, very similar in a lot of ways. But yeah, one is what you would say is involuntary, it's negative, and the other is more voluntary and you're actually choosing to do it. It's a positive sort of thing. So I put it down as The voluntary ones, I mean, if you're doing it voluntarily, I hope you're doing it for a good reason.
Mm.
I hope if it's almost like if it's voluntary, then it has to be good. But as we were talking before, it can be one of those ones where you didn't look deep enough, and then you look in the future, you look back and you're like, stuff it. I was doing
Well,
that for all the wrong reasons.
but even more, if it's voluntary and it's good, then suck it up. Suck it up if it sucks and it's stressful at the same time, right? Because
Yeah, I
how
see
often,
that as only positive, pretty
yeah,
much.
let's whatever. Let's just take a thing that might be of a stressor, but if it's good, right, and it might be, hey, you're pulling together a presentation to something so that it can better your company, or you are undertaking a workout that goes for an hour and you're doing movements that you don't really want to do or that are really hard. Bottom line though is, yes, it's a stressor, and probably yes, it's going to suck. But if it's voluntary and good, I'd go that's paying. That's just paying the price for like the good thing that's coming to you.
Yeah, yeah. And this is where it's a tricky one where I think in this case it can change, and that's what trips people up. So, what you take on board, if you join a company and you have expectations of it's going to be like this, and then it is like that, and then new boss comes in and this job you used to really love then becomes a thing that you hate. I think that kind of can change from a voluntary to an involuntary one, even though the work is seems the same. And you can think about the same of this with relationships, with hobbies, even what you food, the food you eat. I think all of those are not serve that original purpose. And so
Mm,
this is where you got to be mindful of, okay, this was a stressor that I originally thought was good, but then just due to change, just due to time, just due to life, it's not serving me as it used to. But you kind of have already locked it in your mind mentally as, work good or handstands good. And then, you're starting to just hate them because you're getting tendonitis all the time or whatever. And then
mm,
that's where I can go, okay, well, that's where I can kind of switch over without you even realizing it. And then for the other stuff, mitigating the involuntary things through strategies, I think that's also worthwhile thinking about. So this is some of the things that I used to do, for example, with work when I was in it wasn't the worst situation, but I noticed myself doing certain things looking back retrospectively, and I'm like, oh, okay, I think those were kind of coping strategies. So some of the things I used to do, I used to drink on the weekends, and I would drink, like a 6 pack or something, and that would be almost every weekend that I would do that. I used to kind of do yoga. I'd do kind of stoic training or read books like that. And I think some of those things worked better than others. Drinking beers every every weekend, it wasn't good for me. It took the edge off, and it served a purpose of reducing that involuntary stress, but it wasn't a helpful strategy in the long run. And thankfully I only
mm,
did that for like 2 years or something. uh and I was noticing this with my friend Lucas as well. When he was here, he would have a beer or two every night after work, and it was just a thing that he did. And I think he didn't realize it at first what he was doing, and then after 6 months he was kind of going like, oh no, like I kind of need this now because it is
mm.
this stress, it is just freaking me out. So I think there are better ways of dealing with involuntary stuff as well. And for some people it's just going to be really really hard because life can just sucker punch you with family member injury, you get sacked because of work and
Mm,
financial things outside of your control, and you're starting to have a lump on your chest, and your baby, you're having another child on the way, and your wife's family is fighting over money or something. All of that can hit you at the same time. And then, yeah, I just hope you've prepared or have some
Well,
strategies to try and get through all of that without
yeah. So I
resorting
think,
to heroin.
but I think in stress, right? There's I was thinking there's two parts. There's one, like, yeah, build the practices or the tools that you can deal with both voluntary and involuntary, but especially involuntary because you don't expect them. But I kind of just think it broadly, and I think it goes to your hypothetical. If I was to look at it, I go, or at least where I stand with it, I go, I think you should try to bring on as much voluntary stress as possible so that you are prepared for the involuntary stress of life. Because, the bottom line is everyone's going to go through some level of involuntary stress, right? Your parents are going to die, friends are going to die, shit's going to happen, things are going to go bad. And it's in those moments that if you've put yourself through the voluntary stress, that you can kind of look at it and go, okay, you deal with it and you do the things you need to do. Right. I'm not saying be emotionless, but putting yourself, and this goes to the Nassim Nicholas Taleb piece of being anti-fragile, is putting yourself in enough positions that when you've practiced having stress on you, right? Think about it, little cube and having all the exertion, the force around it. And if you're doing that for years and different permutations and variabilities, when something comes up and something happens that's a little bit different, at least you know how to handle it, or at least you can contain it and go, cool. I see what's happened. I can kind of put position next, and go deal with it. And the more I feel like I've gone through life as well, heaps of different involuntary stresses have come up, but it's been very few and far between now where something's come up and I've gone, holy shit, I've lost my marbles. I don't know how to deal with this. It's maybe in the moment like, oh crap, this is weird and wonderful and I've got to deal with it. And then you kind of go, yeah, but I've gone and done this again. Example of this morning, right? Today was insane, but I kind of cemented in the fact that, and at least for me, there's always for me, is the training is that no matter what, you know what, none of it was as hard as a 5 kilometer run. To be honest, with the 15-kilo backpack, that was probably harder. And as much as whatever could be thrown, I almost kind of relate back and go, oh well, it wasn't as hard as that. So cool, let's just deal with this.
How
And
much
sure.
of this morning was voluntary versus involuntary for you? So the 5K run, that's obviously voluntary. You chose to do that. There's no,
Mhm.
you didn't have to do that. What were the other things you were talking about?
I guess
Deadlines. That
involuntary. I
was
mean,
also
involuntary would have been
voluntary.
waking up like super early. Some of the time pressure on the actual run itself having to be done at a particular timing, but it was voluntary that I would go and do the run, voluntary to train, voluntary to do the class. None of those things I had to do. If I really had to look at it, you don't have to. I'm not, trying to achieve a particular thing. Yes, it's part of my plan, but I could have made, excuses or shifts around it. But I went, I can kind of make it work. Cool. And to be honest, doing them helped for the rest of the stresses for the rest of the day. So I kind of go, I'm really glad that even though that felt like maybe it sucked to do in the morning, it allowed me to get through the day where a lot of other involuntary stresses came up to deal with them.
Yeah. Okay. So just for me, I've already talked about how stress doesn't help me. So I try and minimize it in every way possible that I can. So typically, this will take the format of not making promises. So I'll either just do the thing, or it'll kind of be, yeah, it's up in the air. I won't necessarily commit to something. And to be honest, not taking on responsibility a lot of times. So this is obviously not for everyone, as I'm kind of pretty self-sufficient. So I think there is a kind of give and play with responsibility, which is, half of it is you're helping others, and then half of it is you're helping yourself by feeling needed by others at the same time. It's kind of a both of those. So a lot of times I look at my life and I go, yeah, no, I'm just trying to reduce stress in this particular way. And that doesn't necessarily mean I'm not doing things. I have a 7 p.m. thing with you. I had a 10 a.m. podcast. I've got certain things that need to be released on certain days. I try and go for a workout every single day, basically. There's other responsibilities that I do have, but most of them are on me. They're kind of internal ones. They're not actually relying on other external sort of stuff. So yeah, I don't know. So sometimes I just look at so many things and I'm just like, why so serious? Why do you have to go after this thing? Why are you putting stress on yourself? Do you actually need to do that thing? Do you need to buy that thing? Do you need to help this person or whatnot? And just to finish with the hypothetical, so let's just restrict this to the kind of A type people, those who are go getter entrepreneurs. If they have say they're in their 20s, early 20s, and they set themselves like, this is what I want to be doing. This is what I want to be doing or have done by the time I'm 50. This is the position I want to be in. Do you think they will accomplish that better if they had, 3 to 4 successive burnouts, period where they recover, then go ramp up again and do it like that? So, every 3 or 4 years they kind of burn out, or maybe even every 8 years. Or if they kind of just did a slow and steady thing where they never reach that point, which do you think would reach their 50s and have be more successful in their own terms of whatever they define success as? Do you think it is like a personality thing that some people, it's just the
I don't know.
burnout
I feel
thing is the way that they get there, and that if they did try and do the slow and steady, that it would just be so demotivating or something like that that they would never actually get stuff done?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's a shit hypothetical, just in terms of like the broadness of it. I'm like, man, what the fuck?
That's
But
fucking niche as.
but I get what you're trying to like convey with it. I mean, I think I would say because success could be like what is success here? Because
Well, that's what I said. It's they define it themselves. At their early 20s, they get to choose. This is what I want to be when I'm 50. Or have done.
Like I just think that both ways would achieve it, right? Yeah, I'm sure you could achieve it without burning yourself out, but you could also achieve it by burning out. More you would overlay is like which one's funner, which one's more enjoyable? Is it more enjoyable to just get up to like slammed a couple of 3 or 4 times and get there, or just go through it as like a more gradual build? Again, I think it just comes to that's even less of the what they define success, but what they find fine in the journey, right? Because like between you and me, that's the difference. Like for me, I would say absolutely, let's get slammed 3 or 4 times and just go absolutely balls to the wall, and then make it. I go, well, maybe parts of the journey would be fun. The intensity would be fun. The learnings would be good. I kind of have a view that you'd probably go down the other path, where it's the long, gradual progression up. You're not really hitting burnout, but it's just that good consecutive work that leads to the results, right?
Yeah. Have you ever
So
burnt out one? Would you say you've ever reached
I don't think
point
I've
of that?
ever. I mean, there has definitely been times when I used to work in the past where there was like very prolonged, and here I'm talking like 3 months worth of like really hardcore effort, where by the end of it, I'm like, whoa. I'm like, I like, that's what, when it starts saying like, oh, I need a holiday. Like I need some time off. I need whatever. And here, case in point, I believe that happened once, and I headed off to a bit of a holiday over to Greece, and 3 days into the trip, on the third day, so first one day, I relaxed. Second day, I relaxed. The third day, got to about halfway through the day, and I was so itchy to get back to doing something that I pulled out a journal, like a note paper, in the middle of Naxos Island by the pool, which the beach was just in front of me. And I started doing analysis on properties in a country town called Moe, which is 100 and something kilometers east of Melbourne here in Australia, about investment analysis in the properties. That's just how my mind works. I did it for a couple of hours and I loved it, dude. Right? That's just how I operate. So I think
from that.
hey, well, I almost purchased a property back then around that, and then we just didn't for whatever reason. Good thing I didn't end up. If you can have a look at down, the properties are about the similar thing, so didn't end up going on that path. But that's just how I operate, and I think it just depends. You got to kind of know who you are as an individual and how you operate, because again, your question, and that's why I was like, it's a weird hypothetical, because it just depends on who you are and how you want to operate. Now, what I would say though is there is to that hypothetical, if you want to achieve ridiculous success, and this might be like the cultural success, not the individualistic success, I kind of go toward you have to go through the burnout phase, not the long, slow, gradual build. And if it is that slow, gradual build, it would be like a very, very, very unique few that accomplish it, but not the great and many.
Yeah, I'm not so sure.
But that's towards like
we disagree.
But that's I would say towards the cultural, like what culture deems its success. The incredibly rich, the incredibly high status, the whatever you put it in there. I kind of go, I feel like you have to push boundaries in some way, shape, or form. Very few and far between do you hear the ones of like, oh yeah, they just work through and kind of like just meander the way, and then now they've like reached that incredible position.
Yeah, I'm
I
just
just,
trying to
or
think
maybe you don't hear those stories as much.
the greatest of the greats. When I think of them, uh, I put them more in the camp of the slow and steady. Like I'm thinking of the kind of Warren Buffett's of investing. I never got the feeling that he was a burnout sort of guy.
Oh, I definitely know,
Maybe
well,
maybe
and
Roger
that's what I mean,
Federer.
and that's why I
And this
say
is
it'd
where
be
I'm
like,
thinking like the
mm,
actual like the goats, the Tom Brady, that sort of deal.
yeah, but again, like,
The best of the best.
well, that's what I was saying. Like Warren Buffett, yes, a lot of money, not the richest, right? But if you look at the top, whatever of rich people, there's a lot who are compounding growth, just sticked around and did that for sure. But then you look at the very top people, like Elon Musk's or your Gates or Bezos and whatever. Man, I'm sure they worked their faces off
Mm.
through a lot of things. Maybe didn't go through all the failures, but they sure. And man, Elon Musk still works his face off, right? Like probably way beyond what we would even consider something that we would want to do, and stresses probably beyond what we've even considered. I wouldn't find that fun. I sure as hell
Yeah.
think that you wouldn't find it fun. But they're probably the people who've reached like the true, like, oh man, they're richer, high status, more celebrity status, whatever it may be. But again, it kind of depends on what you're containing. And I think that view of like the person who like, and you actually hear this. I feel like I hear the story more all the time. The people who made it, crashed, made it again, crashed, made all the money, and now they're like incredibly rich. I feel like I hear that more than Warren Buffett style, where it's just like, okay, cool, I just did it for a long time. And I think that's also, I
Yeah, that
call it
might
that
be just
people
you looking for it and me looking for my thing, to be honest.
maybe. I mean, can you name a couple of other people beyond like a Warren Buffett in any other
I was
like
just thinking
area?
kind of like Roger Federer, for example. I never got the impression like he's probably what you would say the goat of tennis. Well, I guess you could argue between him and Djokovic if you wanted, but
Mm.
I never got the impression from him he was a burnout sort of guy. Uh,
Now, are you saying that because you think, or because you've looked into it?
well, I mean, uh, what does looking into that? I've certainly heard interviews of him, but I mean, I haven't spent 10 hours looking into it. No.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, and the question, the reason I asked that is that I think at face value, like, would you have thought that like Michael Phelps burnt out?
Yes. He's
And
what,
so,
like
what
30
makes you
months after.
think Phelps burnt out, but someone like a Federer wouldn't have?
Mostly because he did seem to have those rises and falls from what I could tell. Just my general. I don't know much about swimming, so this is just more perhaps news cycle than anything else. But
Yeah, like it's worth considering. So I feel like when you and and we're probably not going to get answer to this, but I think if you really dig into the ones who like general again success and what that means, I think you'd find a lot in there that are either have done certain things which put either stresses or failures or just blow ups at a higher level than we probably anticipate, and that's why I kind of feel like it's very rare for it to be the one who just kind of did a disciplined thing and rose to the top and stayed there and fantastic. And not to say that it doesn't. I find it hard to believe that would be more common
I'm not
than
talking
the other
about
one.
more common. I'm talking about the greatest of the greats. So like,
Mm,
sure, the top level, but the ones who are the undenied supremes, are
mm,
they? What camp do they fall in more? So yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, some fun there.
Yep.
Cool. Well, I think that's a good place to end it, my friend. What do you reckon about doing your long term goals for the next musings?
Yep. I think that's a good idea. I reckon we
Cool.
should do that. Absolutely.
Sweet. All right. So that's a little
But just
teaser for the
quickly,
next.
because this is I think it was because I was interested in this. I just quickly like literally googled it, and again,
Because of
it'd be worth
Google.
digging.
Yeah.
It'd be worth digging more into it. And this is from 2013. But it's about Roger Federer's negative spiral is ongoing for all tennis superstars. And it's like Roger Federer recently admitted that he tried to do too much in returning to the ATP Tour last year following a back injury. I played matches that I should have never played.
Is he still
So again,
playing? Is this recent or so?
no, this is 2013, and no,
Okay.
he's stopped playing now. But like, again, I think it's worth. I'll summarize it in this way. I think with some of the stresses, I think if you want to reach the very TP top, you're going beyond the mere mortal lights level. Be prepared for stress. I don't think you can get there without some significant stress. I honestly, I don't think anyone could name me right now someone who hasn't gone through some significant stress. Even if you want to call it someone like a, Warren Buffett, it's just purely the stress of fucking holding on to the motherfucking money and not selling, right? Like there's stress in all forms to get to the top, voluntary, involuntary, you name it. There's going to be a lot. And I think you have to just choose which games you play, right? If you're willing or wanting to get to those levels, that's also what comes with the territory. Again, if you want to step into the arena, get ready for it and then fucking complain. But if you're going to complain, or if you want a life where you deem success to be something where stress is a little bit removed, that's not to say that it's a failure. It's that you need to admit and realize what it is that you want from it. And if so be it, then cool, then take that path. And as long as you're sure that it's what you want, because you're going to get people just telling you that you just a home, like you're just a bum doing whatever you're doing. Cool. Let them think that. If you've got the reason and the reasonability of what you're doing, it doesn't really matter anyways. So
I
yeah.
was just listening to the handstand cast, and they were telling me they was talking about how they sometimes get questions of well, not them in particular. I think this was one of their guests. Do you know Gold Medal Bodies? You heard of that? So Ryan Hurst, who's I think it was Ryan Hurst is the name. He it's a very popular like online place. It used to be kind of the equivalent of like the gymnastics version of the bodybuilding forums that used to go on. So think of that. And he would sometimes get questions or hear about parents who are like asking about what kind of drugs to get their 13-year-old on so that they can reach this level in sports or something, get the scholarship, that sort of deal. And yeah, that was where I was going like, damn, that's like absolute burnout enforced on on someone when they have no critical capacity to make those decisions themselves to be able to look at that. So yeah, I think that there's definitely a topic where we just have different thoughts on it. So
Yep. Let me know, folks, in the comments or in the boostgrams
Who's right?
sending
Who's
through.
right?
Who's right? Who's right? Is it Karen sort of chilling out, not really doing much with himself and life and the world as usual, or us over here putting the stresses of life and making things work?
Yeah,
But no,
sure.
genuinely, I would want to know where does it sit for you in terms of stress and where you see it. Do you like to minimize it while still voluntarily putting stresses in yourself, but minimizing it so that you may be a better person? Or do you lean towards enjoying the stresses and that so that you can be ready for whatever? Or do you sit somewhere in the middle where you're kind of like, I don't know, I just don't like stress?
Yeah, I'd also like to hear these things.
Mm.
Cool. So best way to do that is if you're on YouTube, leave a comment. If you are on a podcast audio app, then leave a boostergram coming through to us. If you don't want to do that, you can also just go and reach out to us on any of the social media platforms. We're a bit more active in the Discord now, so if you join there, you'll be likely to hear from one of us or see some of our posts and join in a bit of a conversation there. So I would just highlight that because we've always had that in the links, but we never particularly used it. But I am starting to use it a bit more now. So yeah, just do that. And then finally, Value for Value podcast. All of this is done ad-free, sponsor-free, without any. You're never gonna get. I'm just imagining like a Nike or something sponsoring us, and then they're hearing me just being like, nah, just take it casual, like you don't need to get after it. You don't need to just do it. You can kind of just do it. And they'd be like, fuck off. Yeah. So in any case, there won't be any of those dilemmas. So the way that we ask that you show some support is through the 3 T's: time, talent, and treasure. If you want to share this with someone, if you want to join us on the live stream on 7 p.m. on a Australian Eastern Standard Time, we would very much enjoy that. So you're contributing some of your time to us, as we had in those comments in the YouTube chat. That was very nice. You could also, if you're talented, if you have looked into these things deeply, you could reach out to us and let us know in particular if there's anything that this audio sounds bad, if there's anything that you think that we could be doing better. We'd really love to know that. And then finally, with the treasure, there's 2 links in the show notes. One of them will take you to the PayPal. I should have actually checked that previously, but I didn't. So I will quickly do that right now. So if you want to be the first one to send that in, I would very much appreciate it, just to know if it works. And you can also do it via a boostergram, which is, as I said, a message that you can get within the actual podcasting app and send us through a payment of Satoshis, like Dave Jones did, like who were the other people who sent ones in? The
McCormick.
user leave a name if you're going to do that. We would really enjoy that. And then finally here on the PayPal, no transactions, so you could be the first one to do that if you wanted to, which we would very much appreciate. There we go. Thank you.
Beauty.
Juan, take us
Good.
out.
All right. Well, thank you very much, folks. We'll tune in for next time. Take care wherever you are in the world. Immortalites, one out.
Karen out.
Bye.
Very good. Okay, thank you, everyone. I'm gonna stop the stream
Thank you.
here, and yeah, until the next time. Thank you for joining us, Paula. Thank you